In this video, I'm going to share my best advice for new therapists. Hi, clinical psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu. Welcome back to the Psych Show. The idea for this video actually came from a DM I got from Leah Jacobs, who said, "Hello, Dr. Mattu. I'm starting my mental health practicum this week. Good luck. I hope it went well. Any advice for starters in the field?" So I have trained psychologists and social workers, psychiatrists, and across every stage of training, beginning, middle, and end, there's 6 things that keep coming up for me in my supervision, in my classes, in every experience I have with trainees. So I want to share that advice with you in this video. Number 1, get direct feedback. My very first training experience, I was working one-on-one with patients and my treatments were all videotaped. So my patient would consent to this, they know this is a training clinic, and as a result, everything was videotaped. My supervisor would watch that videotape, take notes, and during our hourly supervision would give me feedback. The very first therapy session I ever had, my supervisor reviewed it, watched it, and said, "Ali, who is this person? I don't recognize them. They're nothing like you." And I was really shocked and scared and anxious and uncomfortable. And we watched the videotape back, and she said, "Look, you're sitting on the edge of your seat. You're writing everything down in a clipboard. You don't look like the comfortable, casual Californian that I know you are." I was working in DC, so me being a Californian kind of stuck out, and how relaxed I was and wearing flip-flops to supervision and all this stuff that I would not do now. But anyways, she picked up on this idea that I was acting in a way that was not consistent with who I was, and it was showing not only in the video, but probably with the patient who I was working with. Whether it's videotape supervision, audio recorded supervision, doing role plays with a supervisor, trying something out and then immediately getting feedback on it, that is the key to getting better. It taps into a training technique called deliberate practice. This is how musicians train. This is how athletes and Olympians train. The important thing here is to do a thing, get direct feedback on it, have an opportunity to weave in that feedback, try again, and keep getting feedback in the circle you go of improving. Number 2, take on a case that scares you. I got a lot of experience treating OCD early on in my training, and I started to feel pretty comfortable with it. One of the things I wasn't comfortable with was treating the autism spectrum. And so one opportunity came up to treat a case that involved autism spectrum and OCD and school refusal, which is when you refuse to go to school, and it really, really scared me. If I couldn't help this person, they wouldn't be going to school, and they might get kicked out of this school that they worked very hard to get into. Take on a case like that as long as your supervisor is okay with it and comfortable with it, because you might learn things that you never really knew before. Well, that is obvious. Whenever you learn something, you usually learn stuff you didn't know before. But you might discover things that surprise you. Like I learned through working with that case that I actually really enjoyed working with people on the autism spectrum. And everything I learned on that case influenced all the cases I saw later on after I was out of grad school, because I saw so much anxiety and autism spectrum. Those things can come together so often. So take on a case that scares you. Talk to your supervisor about ways in which you can push yourself. This also works both ways. I sought out a training experience at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C. that was just too much and not a good fit for me, and I really struggled in that externship that I had. At the same time, I learned a lot about what isn't a good fit for me, what is a blind spot, and I learned what do I do in situations where I'm struggling. And those skills are just as important as skills related to learning what you really enjoy doing and all of that. So take on one thing each training experience that really scares you. Number 3, Own your ignorance. When I was first starting to work with kids and parents, I did a lot of parent training, which is helping parents to learn the skills to deal with very difficult situations, oftentimes oppositional behavior. And in these situations, you don't just need parenting skills, but you kind of need super parenting skills. So I was working with this one family, and the kid had oppositional behavior and a lot of anxious behavior. So I was applying all the stuff I learned from my supervisor, and then I realized that this parent, actually there's twins here. It's not just one kid that I'm treating, but this other kid is a variable in the equation. So the parents started asking me all these questions about, well, how do you apply a timeout when there's another kid in the room? I remember not knowing the answer to this question, and I remember making something up. It didn't feel like I was making something up. It felt like I was kind of pulling something out of my head that made sense, but I wasn't 100% sure about this because I'd never been in this situation before. I never had to apply this concept to this situation. And that's just part of the ignorance of being a therapist. The more you have experiences treating people, the more you will be able to answer those kind of questions. But when you don't know the answer, don't make something up. Say, I'm not sure about that. I'm going to talk to my supervisor, I'm going to consult with my colleagues, and I'll get back to you. I don't want to tell you something that might not be true or might not be evidence-based. So give me a moment and I'll get back to you about that one. So many of us struggle with imposter syndrome as therapists. We feel like we're younger than our patients and we don't have as much life experience, or we're not parents ourselves, so how can I ever possibly help a parent? Or I've never experienced bipolar depression, so how am I going to know about this? Or you fall into the trap of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you might overestimate your experiences even though you're inexperienced at this thing. All that stuff can happen, and it can make you want to say something that might not be true, or you might be completely ignorant of. So be aware of that, embrace the ignorance, and get back to your patient. Tell them, I'm not sure, I don't know, I'll get back to you. This is usually going to be relationship enhancing. It's not going to destroy or damage the relationship. It'll make the person feel like you're really taking them seriously and you're taking this work very seriously. A note about supervision here: a good supervisor will check in about this kind of stuff, but many of us who have been in the field longer struggle with something called the curse of wisdom, which means it's very hard when you know something to remember what it was like to not know that thing. So there will be times where I might be working with a trainee and I'll say, oh, in this session you probably want to create a fear and avoidance hierarchy with your patient. And I'll say that, and then I might realize, wait, has this trainee ever created one of those? Do they know what that means? Have I just created a situation where I've instilled all this anxiety because they don't know how to do that and they might be scared to ask me? So hopefully your supervisor will check in about this stuff, but if you get asked to do something in supervision and you don't know how to do that, embrace that ignorance and just ask. Can you please show me how you would do that? Can we role play how to do that with my patient? Ask those kind of questions, and you'll be able to really learn from these situations. Number 4, you are not a savior. One of my first patients as a full-time psychologist came in with one problem, and it turned out that this person had a much more severe problem. And I tried for a few months to help them out as best as I could, and it became clear that this person needed what's called a higher level of care. They needed to be not outpatient once a week therapy, but they needed to be in inpatient treatment. They needed a psychiatrist to get involved to help out with medications. They needed a social worker to get them connected with more resources. Basically, they needed a lot more than I could offer. The problem is, I spent way too much time thinking there should be more I can do to help this person. There should be more that I can do to save this person. If I just work harder, maybe I can help them out. For many years, I struggled with this idea of defining who I am as a therapist based upon how well my patients are doing. I don't do that anymore. What I've learned is your job as a therapist, it's not to go in and save someone. It's not to go in and help them solve all of their problems. It's not to quote unquote fix them. I really hate that word because that implies there's something wrong with people and that implies they're damaged, and I hate that language, but that's a tangent. This is not your responsibility as a therapist. Your responsibility is to provide the most effective, ethical, responsive treatment to that person that you can do within your abilities and the limitations of the environment that you're in. You have to ask yourself not, is my patient getting better? But because that's something you can't control, you have to ask yourself, am I providing the best treatment I possibly can in this situation, knowing what I know? Your job is to help them learn how to solve their own problems, help them learn what their strengths are and how to apply them to the situations they're in. Your job is to help them become a resilient person. Number 5. Know your blind spots. When I was working at a counseling center in grad school, I started seeing someone who was struggling with being homesick and being away from their family. At that time, I was dealing with similar things myself, being very far away from my family and a lot of tough stuff happening in my family and feeling like I'm not there to help everyone who's going through this. It wasn't a good match. That person saw me for one session and then they fired me. They felt like I was disconnected and I wasn't there for them. That was the first time I realized this is a blind spot for me as a therapist. It was at that point. Now my blind spot has changed. I'm cool with homesickness, not dealing with those issues. But for me now, someone dealing with tough stuff related to very young children, like toddlers, that's a blind spot for me because I now have my own toddler and I deal with those worries myself. So you have to know what's difficult for you. I've discovered that seeing patients at 3 and 4 o'clock, my energy way dips down at that time. And I have to take care of myself. I have to make sure I have a snack between those hours or before those hours. I have to have some matcha tea or a coffee if it's a really tough day before those hours so I'm able to get through it. Or ideally not schedule anyone at that time and do phone calls and notes or take my lunch hour during that time. I've learned that, what's the other thing I wanted to say about this? Yes, I've learned about the problems I'm very good at treating, oftentimes anxiety, OCD, tics, Tourette's, hair pulling, nail picking. I've learned about things that I can do pretty well, or I can get some additional consultation from colleagues to think my way through that. Bipolar depression is one of those. Also, substance use is one of those. And then I've learned about the things that I am not good at and really don't understand that well, and I need to refer out to colleagues. So eating disorders is a big example of that. I can treat bulimia-related issues, but anorexia, I'm not good at treating that at all. Every therapist has their blind spots, and your blind spots will change as you move forward in your career. Discover what they are, and if you struggle at something, great! You've discovered one of your blind spots, and you can now get consultation from colleagues, get support from supervisors, or refer those cases to someone else. Number 6. Start practicing good boundaries. When I was in grad school, I did not charge people for missed sessions. Most sites I was at had a policy of you have to cancel within 24 hours or 48 hours unless there's a major health concern or emergency reason. And if you don't cancel within that time period, you might be charged your copay or some type of small fee. This is super important because if people just no-show, it's really going to have an impact on the clinic at large. What I thought at that time is, well, I don't need to worry about this because I'm a trainee, I have a very low fee, it's not gonna make a big deal, and I don't wanna feel bad by telling my patient that they missed that. Well, guess what? When I graduated, when I got my degree, when I got licensed, I still was doing that thing. I was still not charging people for missed sessions. And then it had a huge impact on me. It had a huge impact. I would have to see more patients because I am not practicing those good boundaries and letting my person know, hey, you missed this session, we have this cancellation policy, as a result, you're gonna be charged this fee. When I started doing that, things got better and I felt good about myself, and it didn't feel like it was this awkward thing between me and my patients. So if you don't start practicing good boundaries now while you're a trainee, you're not going to magically have good boundaries when you're a full-time therapist. So whether that means charging your patients when they no-show, or whether that means only checking email and voicemail within business hours and only responding to those messages during business hours, or it might mean taking vacation, taking time off. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to trainees and I've said, you know, I've noticed you haven't taken any days off this semester at all. What's going on? And usually people are taken aback like, oh, what do you mean? I'm working really hard. I'm trying to do everything. And I'm like, this is a tough job. And if you don't take care of yourself, no one's going to step in and be like, hey, why aren't you taking care of yourself? So start practicing these good boundaries now. Start making those good habits now so that when you're out of grad school, those habits will already be there. I know this is really hard to do, and some of your supervisors probably don't have good boundaries themselves. So just pick one thing. Pick one thing you'd like to practice a bit more and just work on that one. In fact, that's good advice for all of these skills. There's so much stuff I wish I could get into, but there's not enough time. So I want you to check out this Twitter thread. There's lots of great advice that some of my friends and colleagues have shared. And if you'd like to learn more about career advice for therapists, check out this playlist. I've got videos on a wide variety of topics, stuff like what I wish I knew before I went into therapy, how I analyze my patients, lots of other good stuff. And if you're in grad school right now, check out this video, which has my best survival tips for graduate students. Time for the Gekboo Challenge of the Week. This week, what is happening is two of my closest friends from New York City are coming to visit me here in California. They're the first guests we're having since my family moved here to California, and I'm really anxious about it because our home is not in the state I want it to be. By having a toddler, things are very messy. I'm gonna try to clean those up, but more importantly, I just don't feel like things are where I want them to be, to have guests over. I get into a lot of this perfectionistic thinking. When I have guests over, I want the place to feel homey and welcoming, and I want it to also feel like it's lived in. And right now, we don't have any photographs of family up on our walls. I really wish I did. So for me, the get comfortable being uncomfortable thing I'm working on this week is being okay with that, being okay with things not being the way I want them to, and stop fighting with that thought of things need to be up and look a certain way, and come to terms with it. Let go that tug of war battle I have with this thought and just sort of let it be and practice being okay with that. The comment of the week for this week comes from Katie Joe. Katie made a comment that made me feel so good because I spent so much time making this video about Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, spent a lot of time scripting it out, filming it, going to see the movie, reacting to it. So much stuff went into that video. And I made that video and I kept thinking like, no one's gonna watch this, or not as many people as I want are gonna watch it, all that sort of stuff that goes through a YouTuber's head. And then Katie made this super nice comment that made me feel so good, where she said, me, has never seen Star Wars, nor do I care about it. Also me, watches the entire thing because I love all these videos. Thank you, Katie. Made me feel so good. Like, it was totally worth it, because this video might have just brought some joy or some new perspective or something in your life enough for you to make that comment. So thank you. You made me feel so good about doing this stuff.